love you.
Welcome to Tea Time with Sweetapple. I'm Sweetapple, and I apologize if you hear some background noise. It's 100 degrees today, and I cannot stand the bear turning off my AC. Oh, good call.
If you're hearing this, I love you.
Ooh, sounds good. Sounds great. I'll wait to get started, but I will start measuring out my tea. I'm just gonna be making one batch, I guess. This is a Lao Chateau, so it gets a lot of steeps, but I'll just be doing the one tea, so I'll probably get at least 10 steeps out of this. This one is, I was told that I'm supposed to use a little bit more than, oh yeah. Yeah, so this one I use a little bit more than normal because I was told that since the nuggets are so packed, that's what you want to do. So for this, I use about 10 grams, though normally I use about about 7 for for this little vessel here. But yeah, 10 seems to work for this in my experience. It's pretty comparable to 7 grams of regular pu'er. Yeah, yeah. I believe the rule of thumb is like that I go with is 1 gram per 15 milliliters. But yeah, like I said, uh, everything I've read about these little tea nuggets, they say that you're supposed to use a little bit, just a little bit more. I found that 10 is a pretty good amount for me. Hey Sammy, how's it going? Hope you're having a good Monday. You just missed my fancy new overlay. Here, I'll show you real quick. I made this Friday afternoon, I believe. Just trying to make the stream a little more put together. Yeah, I'm good. Oh, yeah? Did you think I was using like a lot of leaves? It can be hard to tell sometimes. This looks like a lot, but yeah, this was 9.7 grams right here. Sometimes if I'm really feeling voracious and fiendish for the tea, I might use 10 of a regular leaf that's not this Lao Chateau. Get an extra strong brew, but I try to not go too crazy with the leaves. If I'm that addicted towards tea, I'll tattoo that. Alright, I'm gonna start heating up my vessel. But yeah, I'm just trying to stay out of the heat. Yeah, yeah, that's a the temperature that you brew with definitely makes a huge difference, even in the little bit of experimenting with temperature I've done. So I think it's really neat that everyone can kind of have their own sweet spot where, I like this temperature, these brew times, this quantity of leaf, and I think that's such a beautiful aspect of Gong Fu is everyone kind of there's room for you to have your own style, and it's definitely good to learn the basics, and I'm always happy to be informed about what the traditional standards are because that definitely helps inform my own brewing. But I love that there is that room for everyone to find their own balance. Oh, that's no fun. Yeah, I hope you feel better soon. I didn't really have any tea this weekend because it is it's been 100 degrees plus all weekend and it's just too hot. I just would be sweating like crazy. Unfortunately, I haven't experienced tea doing that cool down trick for me. Maybe I'm not drinking the right teas, but it's much, much too hot. But I will drink some tea this morning before it gets to the fever pitch. Oh, yeah. I remember last time I was sick, I could barely taste my tea, and that was very disappointing. So I can empathize. Yeah, I can empathize with the excitement to try out your tea and then not being able to taste it. Replace the nug I dropped on the ground. One that was not on the ground. Yeah, I got a couple friends who agreed to sometime this week we're gonna be sort of doing a digital writers room finally get around to working on the screenplay I've been putting off. So that should be fun. I'm pretty excited for this week. I was supposed to record a feature on Friday, but I wasn't able to download the file that I got sent, so I couldn't actually record. So I'm waiting on that to record some stuff, but I also got some beats of my own that I could work with. So I'm a little spoiled for choice this week. It's always a nice position to be in. Oh, I'm excited to see what you think. So I'm having some Lao Chateau today, made from purple tea leaves, and it is Jingu aged. I've had this before, and it is very delicious. It's very sweet. It's got a nice mild earthiness and some cocoa notes to it. Definitely recommend. 7 grams, 95C. Although, if you're having an oolong, usually what I'll do is I pour into a cup first to cool it a few degrees. So I would probably say closer to like 93, 92. Yeah, I pretty much do. I set my kettle to basically 95 for almost everything. Yeah, the cup is mostly just so I'm not pouring directly on the leaves. The spout pours pretty slowly, so I usually fill my cup. I use a bigger cup and a guy one for oolongs, but as you can see, this doesn't have the quickest pour since I like to do pretty short steeps for oolongs and more greener teas. I go with the cup mostly just for the control over my steep time. 1:11 a.m. It's never too late for tea. It's always a good time. There we go. Always got to get that last drop. Oh no, that's too bad. It's always disappointing when you're looking forward to having a treat and then turns out for whatever reason you can't. In your case, the soybeans spoiled. Never I haven't had much soy milk in general to be honest, but I've definitely never had it fresh. I bet you it's so much better when you're making it fresh. Do you like to add any flavoring to it or you like it just straight up as it is? Taiwanese hot soy milk. Ooh. Oh, wow. That does sound really good. Interesting. That makes sense. Yeah. I feel like with all the processing that's done to food out here in the West, we lose a lot of the flavor that is naturally there. So we tend to pump our foods with flavorings and sugar to make up for it. Yeah, I believe it. I definitely believe that. Yeah, I love to make things fresh when I'm able to, but it gets very expensive to make fresh food in the US. Good like fresh quality ingredients are very very expensive, very premium here. So, we get like $4 microwave dinners instead. Yeah, but when I do have the money to buy fresh ingredients, I try to because it tastes so much better and your body feels so much better when you're eating, real food. Wow, that's amazing. I'm not sure. I'm curious actually, because a lot of times there's a lot of things that just don't even get carried in the States. Holy smokes. Yeah, we're looking. Let's see here. There's some bulk. 16 USD for 500 grams on Amazon is the first thing I see. Oh, here we go. If you are fortunate enough to have H Mart, which is a Korean grocery store near you, which is very rare, but if you are lucky enough, you can get 3 pounds, which is a little bit over a kilogram. It's like a kilogram and a third of dried soybeans for $9. Mm, that sounds great. I actually I have a thing that makes nut milk, but it was sold as a constant like a butter infuser for a particular herb, if you know what I mean. But it's the exact same device that you use to make probably soy milk, but definitely different kinds of nut milk. Yeah, I bet. Yes, the store-bought soy milk is incredibly expensive. A blender, yeah, it's basically a glorified blender with a heating element in it. Um, yeah, I got mine for not milk related reasons. I got mine for cannabis related reasons. You use it and infuse your butter, and now you can make anything into a recreational food, which is why it has the heating element. Perks of living in California, I suppose. But yeah, it's pretty wild how expensive fresh ingredients get in the U.S.
If you're hearing this,
But I do try to buy them when I can. I actually am getting a grocery delivery today. I got some stuff to make a slow roast in the crock pot, so that'll be good. Some fresh cooked food with raw ingredients, and then I got mostly pasta for other meals. Lots and lots of pasta. Oh yeah, definitely. You would have very happy soy milk. Yeah, it's they call it the magic butter machine. I got it actually at a secondhand store for like 30 bucks cuz they wanted if you buy it from the company, they charge like 400 bucks for that thing, which is just ridiculous. Cuz it is just a nut milk maker and you can buy those things on Amazon for much less than they're charging. But I got lucky, found it at a Goodwill, which is somewhere people sell their used pretty much everything, to be honest. I love going to secondhand stores because you never really know what you're gonna find. Exactly. If it works, it works. It was the bargain of that year for me. But yeah, I love those secondhand stores because you really do never know what you're gonna find. Sometimes people actually find really nice teapots at these places because people will, say someone passes away in someone's family and they're going through their home, clearing out all of their belongings. Someone might come across something and not know what it is and just say, well, I want to get rid of this. So they give it to the secondhand store who sells it and has no idea what it is. They'll say, hey, we'll sell this thing for 30 bucks. And it turns out to be like an F1, uh, like a 60s F1 pot. So definitely always fun to go and check it out because you really truly never know. It's also a really good way to get clothes. Lots of people will sell their clothes. Awesome. I hope that you enjoy your tea. Or maybe I'm about to find out that I brew tea in a fashion only I could love. Yeah, I brew a lot of pu'er and hei cha in general, so I uh, I got pretty quickly into the habit of using hot water for everything. But I do tend to take a little bit more delicate approach to oolongs and green tea. I'm usually on that pu'er train. But to each their own. That's the beauty of Gong Fu is we can all kind of find what works for us, and I love that. I'm definitely a fan of a nice strong brew. But this just makes me want to experience tea made by a master all that much more, because maybe it would be enlightening. I'll have to, you know what? Next time that you're in the chat, I'll brew tea your way, and we'll see. Maybe you've got the correct the way that I've been missing out on, and I'll start brewing that way from then on. Or maybe we'll just realize that we got different palates, and that's cool too. Yeah, 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 because like I said, I have a whole, I use my Gaiwan and I pour into my cup first. Um, yeah, I figured out what works for me, at least from my experience, but I'm definitely, especially with oolongs, I'm definitely open to trying different brewing styles because I feel like I figured out what works for me with pu'er, but I definitely have noticed that my oolongs tend to brew out really quickly. So maybe I need to switch up my technique. Have to have a oolong on stream next so I can try that out. Another nice thing with the Lao Chateau, I don't know if y'all have had these little tea nuggets before, but they are unbelievably forgiving. It's pretty much impossible to get these to turn bitter. Um, in the times that I've had them, you can just kind of let it steep, and they just keep making more tea. I always call this the infinite tea glitch because of how much tea I get out of these. I always feel like purple tea has really strong chi as well. You know, so, a type of tea that I'm really dying to try, but is so expensive, is the bug bitten oolongs. I've I almost ordered some off of Yunnan sourcing, but I think it was like 30 or $40 for like 20 grams, and that just seemed expensive. That seemed like a lot of money for not a lot of tea for what would effectively be like 2.5 sessions worth of tea. So I haven't been able to bring myself around to spending the money on it. But I've heard or I've read a lot about how the enzymes that get released when these bugs bite the leaves, it sweetens it and makes the flavor more complex, which I find very interesting. I'm always I'm always fascinated with sort of novel production styles or tea that has a really fun story with it, like the duck shit oolong. I love the story that goes along with that. I think it's cool how you can learn these stories and feel sort of connected to history as you're drinking that tea. So I'm always fascinated by unique teas and teas with good stories. That was close. I've also just seen a lot of praise about oolongs from Taiwan in general. People seem to be really high on those, which is awesome. Makes me very excited to try them. Cause yeah, I think I've got a decent grasp on what I like about pu'er. It's gonna, obviously I haven't figured out the entire genre in a matter of months, but I feel like I've got a general idea, and I've started to branch out into exploring oolong a little bit more. And then once I have a basic grasp of oolong, I want to start drinking some more green teas, and then it'll be just kind of open exploration. Huge fan of black tea. I'm pretty sure there's not a black tea on this earth that I wouldn't like. I love the maltiness of them. I like that some got that smokiness to them. Mm. can't really relate with the hype part of it. It feels almost the usual for me. With Taiwanese oolongs, that's fair. You know, I haven't had a ton of experience, so I don't really have a place to say whether or not it's true. But I've definitely read a lot of things that hype up Taiwanese oolong. But I've also just kind of enjoyed every oolong I've had, so well, I'll have to see. You know, maybe I get some Taiwanese oolong and it blows my mind. Maybe it's just as good as the other ones. But yeah, that's I guess also part of the fun is you get to read about these teas, at least from my perspective, where I don't really have access to tea houses and things like that. I get to read about them and research them, and then I finally buy it and I get to compare my experience with all that research, and it makes it kind of a little adventure in a way.
If you're hearing this, I love you.
I'm getting really excited for the that Donald Glover movie that's coming out slash Childish Gambino album. I don't know if either of y'all are fans, but the tracks from the album are amazing. Mm. Ah, interesting. That's really interesting. So the creaminess or the milky quality comes out at a cooler temperature, and you get those more bright vegetal notes with the higher temperature. Huh, that's really cool. I do love the smell of fresh cut grass. I actually mowed lawns for a little bit as a job. Got to use a ride-on mower for that. That was chill. You just listen to like music or a podcast and just drive in a circle for a few hours. Yeah, definitely update as you try your next brews. I'm interested to hear how the flavor evolves for you. Yeah, I'm really intrigued with this. I can't. I think it's Bando Stone and the New World. I love the idea of writing an album that is a concept album and it tells a story, and then making an actual film based on that concept to align with your album. One, that's just an incredible technical feat, and two, it's just a fun concept. And I'm a big fan of Donald Glover. I think he's an awesome actor. He's hilarious, and he's an incredible musician. Truly a renaissance man. Big fan of his work. Yeah, Childish Gambino. That's the dude. Yeah, I was I think I heard about the movie first and then I heard about the album and I was like, "Oh shit." I was really hyped. The album is amazing. Lithonia is just that song has been stuck in my head ever since I heard it. And yeah, he's so incredible. I'm excited. The movie, from what I've seen, it seems to be about a washed up pop star who's played by Gambino, and he wakes up one night, seemingly after like a wicked party, blacks out, wakes up, and the world has ended. So all his fame and fortune are suddenly meaningless, and he's just like thrust into the chaos of the apocalypse as this very pampered celebrity. And yeah, it just seems like a really fun concept for a movie.
If you're hearing this, I love you.
He was also in Homecoming, Spider-Man Homecoming, if I remember correctly. He had like a really small role as an arms dealer or something like that. I remember seeing him and I was like, "That's my boy." Because I've been a fan of his since like way back in the day when he was on Community, which is a US sitcom. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but super hilarious show. And then he branched out from that into Childish Gambino. Apparently, he was like working on the first Gambino album on the set of that show, and then the rest is kind of history. He blew up after his second, I think, Gambino album. He's just been doing awesome stuff ever since. He's one of those artists that kind of no matter what he's putting out, whether it's music or something in another medium, uh, you just know it's going to be good. He's very consistent with his quality, which is always something I admire. There's a lot of people who, for whatever reasons, they're putting out music or whatever they put out as out of a sort of sense of obligation, and I feel like you can always tell. Like maybe they got locked into a bad record deal and they just gotta churn out some records to get out from under the label, or maybe they've just been burned out or whatever reason. You can always kind of tell when an artist is phoning it in versus when they're challenging themselves with ideas that are exciting to them. And I think we need more artists who are willing to take the risk of challenging themselves when they release media. Too much of what gets put out these days is way too safe, especially in like film and
If you're
TV.
hearing this, I love
We're
you.
just kind of inundated with algorithm fodder, it feels like. I remember reading an article not all that long ago of Netflix more or less saying outright that, like, yeah, we're basically emphasizing making shows and movies that can kind of just be in the background and not actually be focused on. They're just kind of ambient noise. And I can't get down with that. Like, I get why that works and why that makes them money, but I feel like people multitask while watching shows, largely because we're either watching shows we've seen a million times, so we don't really need to be engaged, or we need, or the show we're watching is just kind of meh. I feel like if we had better media to watch, people would be more engaged. Heath Ledger did Joker. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that there was probably some underlying mental illnesses that went unaddressed before things got to that point for him. I think that because there's tons of method actors who've done tons of pretty dark and twisted roles and been all right. I think I think the core issue is likely that there were some underlying issues that hadn't been addressed in his life. It's really unfortunate. Um, and I think that there's also just this sort of weird, and it's definitely decreased a bit in the last like decade or so, but I definitely, when Heath Ledger was around, we as a culture sort of heavily romanticized despair and depression in artists, and set we kind of emphasize this idea that there's a correlation between despair and great art. And I think that to a degree there's an element of truth, but I don't think that you have to be in despair to make great art. In my opinion, I think that, experiencing trauma and experiencing despair at some point in your life informs your art. And I think it gives you the lived experience to make something that's really impactful, but I don't think you have to stay there to continue to make great art. And I think that that's where a lot of people, they get it twisted, and they feel burned out and they feel like they've lost their creativity, so they seek out that despair. They seek out, self-destructive behaviors that put them in that place again, in hopes that it'll revitalize their arts. And for some of them it does, but usually the cost is very high when they get to that point. And if I had to put money on it, I would say that that's likely what happened with Heath Ledger. But I love the trope of like, who is it? It's not Miura. There's a anime director who's kind of like the opposite of Miyazaki, where Miyazaki is extremely like brooding and generally kind of negative in his thinking, very pessimistic. But the worlds he creates are so beautiful and so vibrant and full of life. And then what's his name? He's the horror guy. He made like Uzumaki and stuff like that. I'm totally blanking on Shinji Ito, yeah. Um, he makes these like super disturbing horror stories, but he's like the most sunshine and rainbows dude you'll ever meet. And I think it's funny how the seemingly happiest people have a tendency to make like really twisted stories, and the people who are a little more brooding and a little more angsty, maybe in an effort to escape that place mentally, they tend to make a little more upbeat media. But yeah, the Gatmoe is strong with those two. Absolutely, absolutely. Junji Ito and Miyazaki could not be more opposite. Though I couldn't help but wonder if the two of them tag teamed and made something together, what that would look like. I feel like that would maybe be the most terrifying piece of anime media ever created. You combine the softness and gorgeous palettes of Miyazaki's worlds with the twisted, disturbing imagery of Junji Ito. I feel like that would just enhance the best elements of both of their media. Probably something that'll never happen, but could you imagine? Holy. Ooh. Have either of you seen The Boy and the Heron? I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard really great things. Just speaking of Miyazaki. The cooler brew is more colorful. Oh, very interesting. That's very interesting. I'm gonna have to, yeah, I'm gonna have to do a cooler brew uh, for my next stream and see for myself. Yeah, I've been itching to see it. I'm not normally the kind of person who cares about spoilers. Like I've had movie endings spoiled for me and still seen the movie because I just that stuff doesn't really bug me. But I've been really avoiding a lot, like as much information about this as I can, because I just love Miyazaki films that much. I want to go in kind of blind. So I've seen a couple clips here and there, but to be honest, those clips just made me more confused as to what the movie is about. And that's kind of exactly where I want to be going into it. Cuz yeah, I love the way that Miyazaki's stories unfold and you can kind of discover the world along with the characters. Yeah, he does. I think part of it has to do with the way he storyboards because he kind of makes it up as he goes. I learned I think there's a documentary where they talk about that, but they basically storyboard the movie as they're making the movie. And so at any moment, he can look at the context of where they are and go, "Oh, well this is where things should go." And I think that really leans into the explorative nature of his storytelling, where you're often in the, perspective of a protagonist who's exploring the world at the same time. Yeah, he cooks the ramen for the staff. Yes. Yep, yep, exactly. Yeah, I hear it's good ramen. I'm curious to try. I'll never get the opportunity, of course, but I would love to have some Miyazaki style ramen. But yeah, it's he's a very interesting person, and just the way that he approaches movies is inspiring. Uh, he is definitely a huge part of why I fell in love with animation early on. I remember seeing Spirited Away for the first time as a kid, and just it absolutely blew my mind. The character designs, the animation was so gorgeous. The storytelling, the way that, and this is very not necessarily unique to Miyazaki, but more to Eastern storytelling, is that like, in Spirited Away and in Miyazaki films and Eastern storytelling, there's not usually a clearly defined good and evil, but often, opposing forces in a film are presented as having their own motivation and being a little bit more complicated than just black and white good and evil. And I love that. I think that that's a little bit more true to life and not something you see in the West a lot. And of course, the music. Oh my goodness. Um, what is it? Carousel of Merry-Go-Round of Life is just randomly will get stuck in my head for like a whole day out of the blue sometimes. Um, Miyazaki and Joe Hisaishi, I believe. I probably butchered his last name, but the two of them make quite a duo because Miyazaki's worlds definitely would not feel, at least not as lively in the same way, without his scores, which just they really do bring the worlds to life in such a fantastic way. If I ever got the chance to see him in concert, that would be incredible. I'd love to. I know that they do tours occasionally where they'll like play them like movie clips on the screen, and then you get the orchestra playing along with the clip. That would be incredible to see. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think that's just such a powerful idea that you don't see presented in Western storytelling often. You know, in the US, when we're writing stories, we're very quick to try to be like, okay, so this is the bad guy, this is why they're bad, and we're gonna do this to take them down because they're bad. And it's like, I don't know. I think that true, like, things and people that are truly evil, I do believe exist somewhat, but I think that they're so rare, you know. I think that they are so rare that stories that embrace the ambiguity of morality a little bit more, feel more realistic, and I feel like there's a lot more that you can get out of them from a storytelling standpoint. Because most of the time when we see someone and we're like, oh, they're bad, they're evil, they're really just complicated. We exist within the context of what happened before us and our upbringing and what goes on around us. And most of the time, people that tick us off or people that wrong us, like you said, are just trying to get by. They're just clashing with us in their own struggle to survive. And I think that that's a very important lesson and something that can really help you be at peace with life a lot more, because it's easy to get mad at the bullshit that goes on around you. It's so easy to just let it consume you, but when you're aware that, most people don't really mean to wrong you, they're just trying to survive as well, it's so much easier to let go of that anger and just be at peace. And I think that we have a tendency to rile ourselves up, especially out in the West, because we're always looking for that objective wrong. And unfortunately, I don't think life is that simple. Because it would be great if there was just like, oh, this is the bad. We're going to lock the bad up and problem solved. That would be great. That would be very simple. But I don't think that's realistic, at least in my experience. I also saw Squid Game season 2 has been announced, and I really hope that that's solid, because I feel like it's going to be 50-50, that it either is an amazing second season, and I'm hoping they kind of wrap up the show with season 2, if I'm honest, because I don't know how much more there is left to explore from a lore standpoint, that would be worth watching. But I feel like it definitely needs a little bit more elaboration on the plot lines they set up. So I'm curious to see how they'll approach it, but I also don't really trust Netflix to not try to treat it like a cash cow. I, my worst fear is that it becomes like the Saw series, where the story becomes completely irrelevant and it's just all about like making the most ridiculous traps possible, which is fun for a time, and it certainly has its place, but I would love to see them really commit to telling an excellent story. Third brew now. Ooh, very exciting. I realize the more I drink tea with other people, I tend to drink my tea pretty quick. A lot of other people that I have tea with definitely they go through their steeps a lot more slowly than I do. Oh right, you're that's right. I forgot that you're brewing two at a time. See, I need to get another guy one so that I can do side by side comparisons like that. I was debating it, but I think this kind of settles that yeah, I definitely need to get one. I'll probably get a travel set so that I can take it on trips with me as well. Yeah, it'd be fun to do some streams where I compare different parameters of brewing just to kind of show people the difference it can make. I say show people with the four loyal viewers that I have, whom I appreciate dearly. I've been uploading these VODs to YouTube though, and adding them to a playlist to kind of work as a sleep aid. I'm hoping that maybe that'll, you know, get some viewership because I know that I, for one, and I know others as well, really appreciate something that's kind of long form, a little more mellow, just to have on and create some ambient noise to preoccupy the brain.
If you're hearing this, I love you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely glass or glazed ceramic makes sense for comparison. This is a pretty porous cup. It would probably not be very good for a control. But yeah, definitely more vitrified materials would make sense because they're not gonna have as much effect on the flavor. But that could be a fun experiment in and of itself, is just comparing, uh, you know, if you use super vitrified teaware except for the cup, for example, how does that compare to using super vitrified teaware except for the teapot or the fairness pitcher? Different steps that you could compare. Hmm, pretty big difference at this on the third brew then. Interesting. Oh, okay. So they're both kind of floral at this point, but the hotter one is a little more intensely floral, you would say, bordering on astringent. Very interesting. We're doing science here today. I love that. Cool. So we got a good control going on.
If you're hearing this,
I'm very interested in hearing the differences. I think it's really cool to be able to compare them like this. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, I definitely think it was smart to use the same amount of leaf for both. It gives us a more one-to-one comparison. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a second guy one, and I'm gonna start doing some more experimenting. I think I'm gonna be drinking a lot of tea for those streams. But I do think it would be really interesting to do some experimentation, compare. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, especially I would say with my oolongs that I've had brewing at the temperature I do, they start to taste pretty flat around the fourth steep. So that definitely makes sense. But I also tend to drink my tea until it tastes pretty much like water. So I do get a few more steeps out of it after that, but they're not very flavorful. Very, very mild usually after that point. What's the cooler temperature you're using? Is it 85 or are you going as low as 80? Mm, that's smart. 85. Okay. That's good to know. I'm gonna have some oolong tomorrow and I'll brew at 85 so we can so I can see for myself how the taste differs. Okay. I got this aged white tea that tasted just very bland to me. So maybe I'll try it at 80. I'll do that on another stream this week because I got a little more than half a cake of that. 10 grams of oolong at 85. Okay. So we'll do the oolong tomorrow, and then I'll do the white tea on, let's see, Wednesday. How long do you steep for your like starting point? Do you do what like 20 25 second steeps or are you still doing only like 10 15 second ones? There we go. Yeah, 30 seconds, 20, 25, 40, 55. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I had a feeling that you would probably need to steep for a little bit longer. Very interesting. Okay, yeah. So that's what we're gonna do tomorrow, and then I'll do the white tea on Wednesday, and then probably back to puar on Thursday. Gotcha. So you tend to start a little cooler than 85 for your first one, and then let it get up to 85. Oh, I see. I see. That makes sense. Well, I'm sure that saves water. Okay. I'm excited to try this. Like I said before, I'm still relatively new to gong fu and honestly tea in general. So I'm always excited to try new techniques and to learn from other people's experience. So it'll be fun giving this a shot tomorrow and seeing how it compares to how I've been brewing. I'll probably start with the Taiguan Yin because I have a good idea of how that tastes and how the aromas smell. So that'll work as a decent baseline for me. Mmm, I see. You prefer a softer first cup. Kind of ease yourself into the session. That makes sense. Tomorrow is supposed to be the last day this week that the heat is in the hundreds. So hopefully we get through tomorrow and we'll have a mellower temperature and I won't need to have the AC on during the stream. Oh, interesting. That's very interesting. So the umami is coming out more. Huh. I'm very curious. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm gonna have to look out for that when I have my brew session tomorrow. Hmm, that makes sense. Yeah, and that definitely tracks with my experience. So I've definitely been I think I'm gonna get a lot out of going for a cooler brew tomorrow. Cause yeah, usually by the fourth brew the flavor is really subsided and starting to taste a little brewed out. I really enjoy the chi of this tea. It's a little bit heady, but it doesn't zonk me out. Like I don't remember what it was that I had on Friday, but the chi in that tea just had me absolutely zonked. I was ready to lay down and take a nap after that. This one is very uplifting, and I just feel like locked in and ready to start my day. I think I probably got one more steep left in this tea, but it's definitely starting to taste a little bit brewed out. Steep for an absurdly long amount of time, and then we'll see what we get from that. I've been seeing videos recently of people who have tea trays made out of Yixing clay, like Duani and Zini clay, and it's so satisfying just watching the way it absorbs the tea. Makes me want one, but I don't think I got the budget to buy one of those quite yet. That'll have to be a special treat one day in the future. I'll have to save up for. But it's very satisfying to see it all just disappear.
If you're hearing this,
Okay, a grassier taste. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. I take it Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I don't have anything that's properly expensive, but I do. I would love to have some nice tea to set aside for a special occasion. But that's partly why I have the gushu cake that I'm aging. I tried it a couple times just to get a sense of how it tastes. Definitely needs a little bit more age, but that's probably gonna be my special occasion tea because it was $60 when I bought it, but it was just pressed this year. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, if you're spending that kind of money on tea, I don't know why you would want to blow through it like that. I'm the kind of person who, when I have something that's like really good quality, I like to savor it. It's just, I don't know. It feels wrong to blow through it. But yeah, I'm gonna try to. Luckily, or maybe not so luckily, I could use yeah, it's gonna take just a couple years. Just like 2 or 10 years, no biggie. But luckily the humidity where I am, it's very, very dry. So, like I said, lucky or maybe unlucky, because it could it could be beneficial in terms of not destroying the flavor of the tea, but it may not. Also, on the other hand, it may not develop that much aged character since I'm basically in a desert. But we'll see. That's all part of the adventure and experimentation. Yeah, yeah. I've noticed that oolong can have quite the range in price. Something like certain da hong paos can be very expensive. But then you can also get different like dan songs and taiguanyins for relatively inexpensive, depending on the age of the taiguanyin and stuff like that. But yeah, it's great. Oolong is a very varied category. So that's a fun one. I'm having a lot of fun exploring, but pu'er gets expensive real quick. But you could definitely find deals, especially with the right pu'er. I think that may be at least in part why I'm partial to ripes, is they're just very accessible money wise. But it's always a treat when you find a tea that's pretty affordable, but is also very tasty. Interesting. Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to one of these days I'm gonna have to learn to toast my own tea. Cause yeah, I'm sure it could save a lot of money. I've seen some setups on like TikTok and things like that, so it doesn't look too complicated. I'm probably just gonna have to accept that I may or may not ruin a little bit of tea and just get some cheap ones to practice with. But that would be fun. I'm all for learning processes and you know doing things myself. I'm a big fan of being able to just do it myself whenever I can, especially if it saves me money. Sometimes to my own detriment. I actually I have my own brew kettle, like a digital automated brew kettle that I made because I don't have the space to brew beer right now, but I had a stint where that was my hobby. I was really into it, and I wanted that automated brew kettle. That was just the way that I wanted to do it. It allowed me to control parameters in the way I was interested in. But those kettles, those setups cost like $1,000 to $5,000. It's pretty absurd. So I just built my own for like 200 bucks and it works just as well. Learn a trick from Japanese brewers. Buy some puff rice, toast them, add them to your tea that's drying out for a fun, nutty last brew. Oh, that is a good trick. I'll have to remember that. Very cool. Yeah, those electric brew kettles are absurd, but I just bought a big old pot, like a seafood boil pot, and then I needed to cut a hole. I had to cut a couple holes, one in the lid and one in the bottom for a spout, and then another one in the bottom for a heating element. And then I just put those in, sealed it with silicone, and then the wort pumps out of the bottom, circulates through a cooling plate, and then gets sprayed through like a shower nozzle back over the top of it, which, you know, sends it back over the grains and circulates it at a controlled temperature. Ochazuke. I don't. Green tea over rice. Oh, this looks tasty. You know, I think I've seen this prepared in a documentary, like a little mini YouTube documentary that I've watched, but I don't think it was actually directly addressed. They just said, and then they make it into a porridge, add the tea leaves. But this looks really tasty. So the heating element that I used. Oh no, actually, I had to get a third hole. Sorry, this was like 4 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. So I had a third hole and I had a temperature probe that was installed, and then I just kind of had a little controller for it. So the heating element and the probe both plugged in to this little box. I can't remember what the name was, but it was like 20 bucks, and I controlled the temperature that way. There are 3 steps to it though. To the Ochazuke, what are the 3 steps?
If you're hearing this, I love you.
Third, one of 3. Eat the rice bowl as is. Add furikake, and then pour the tea in dashi. Oh, I see. So you try it at each step, like at each phase, so you can enjoy all the flavors and the way that each element kind of affects one another. That's really cool. Okay. That's very interesting. It's a great way to use that's a great way to use leftover tea as well. I'm gonna I'm gonna have to see if I can try that out one of these days. It looks pretty simple, and excuse me, my throat's a little congested all of a sudden. But it looks like a pretty simple recipe, and I've usually got rice hanging around, so that's definitely something I could do. I need to get a rice cooker though, because I'm so bad at cooking rice in a pot. I always either undercook it or overcook it and end up making porridge on accident.
If you're hearing this, I love you.
Oh, very interesting. Show me your ways. I need to stop. I need to stop ruining my rice. You use a scale. Oh, okay. I've got a scale. I have a kitchen scale. Doing things by weight is definitely more consistent, I find. So I can definitely appreciate the value of a good scale. Three 60 grams dried rice. Wash it twice or thrice, unless you want to be fancy and rinse till it runs clear. Yep, that makes sense. Yeah. Return to pot. Add water till it reaches 900 to 920. Okay. Then best to let it soak for about half an hour to 1 hour, but long grains can cook immediately. Oh. Letting it soak, that might be the secret sauce. Interesting, because I definitely don't do that. Hmm. Cook over medium flame or until bubbles form. Usually should take 6 to 8 minutes. Don't let it boil. Oh, wow. Okay. I have been cooking rice very wrong. I'm gonna have to try this next time I make a rice dish. If it boils less than that, you might have burnt the bottom a bit. Oh, okay, okay. Then reduce temp, keep it at a simmer. Okay. At this point, I stir to break up the clumps, but a lot of people don't. Doesn't make much of a difference. Okay. I'm adding all of this to my. I have an ongoing recipe note that important cooking information gets stored in. You know, favorite recipes or just really good info, and this is going right in there. Once you barely see water on the surface, let the residual heat allow the starch to absorb the water. Takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. To finish with residual heat.
If you're hearing this, I love you.
All right, well, I have taken notes, and this is how I'm going to cook my rice next time that I do. So I will make sure to let you know how that goes for me. I'm sure it'll be great. Oh, that's the wrong button. There we go. Appreciate the advice, not just on the rice, but also on tea brewing, and it's always a delight to have you in the chat. I think I'm gonna wrap things up for today, but I appreciate you hanging out and sharing your brewing experiment with me. I'm excited to try that out tomorrow and see how my tea comes out differently. So I hope to see you again soon. I hope you have a wonderful day, and yeah, be blessed. Have a wonderful day. My pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, lots of tea, double brewing. All right, I'll see you later.
The number you have dialed is not available at present. Please leave your message after the beep.
If you're hearing this, I love you. love you.